We should never be embarrassed. It can happen to anyone.
This crime has been going on forever. They reinvent themselves so quickly that even if you find a fraudulent website and bring it down, it's almost more dangerous because another one is going to pop up with exactly the same people behind it.
We've seen, big international hacking groups, coming out of West Coast of America, Middle England. It's not just nation states and far-flung groups we need to be worried about.
Welcome back to the Pension Confident podcast. I'm Philippa Lamb. On the podcast this month, how the pandemic provided rich pickings for financial fraudsters. Last year saw a 30% hike in swindlers' profits compared to the year before. Now, you might think you're too savvy to be caught out, but are you really sure you know how to spot a scam? We've got three experts here today to answer that question. Michelle Cracknell, CBE, is the former Chief Executive of the Pensions Advisory Service and an independent non-executive director at PensionBee. Hello, Michelle. Thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here.
Lisa Markey is Head of Security and Counter Fraud at the OBIE. Now, that is the Open Banking Implementation Entity. It's great to have you with us, Lisa. Guest number 3, and that's our in-house expert, PensionBee's own Chief Technology Officer, Jonathan Lister Parsons, who's going to give us his take on the fraud landscape and tell us about PensionBee's own initiatives to combat financial scams. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Philippa. Good to be here.
Now, it's great to have you all here. Before we start, just the usual reminder that anything discussed on the podcast should not be regarded as financial advice, and when investing, your capital is at risk. Last June, Citizens Advice Bureau reported that more than 2/3 of British adults had been targeted by a scammer in the past 6 months.
Thinking of PensionBee, where we're looking at, obviously pensions money, it's a pool of money. And the aim with that will be to persuade somebody to move some of that pool of money, or all of it, if they're really lucky, into a fake bank account. And so this is, I was saying there's nothing really new about that. At the end of the day, mule accounts are being set up. That's a fake bank account set up so that money can be transferred in it for fraudulent purposes. They will try and, over the phone, try and persuade you to give them your username and password. But actually, what we've seen a lot of is the SMS messages. And there was a big fraud incident last year that used an open banking route, but it was nothing new. It was an SMS message that had a link to click and then, put in your payment details. So I think it's really important not to be embarrassed, because when people are embarrassed, they don't admit things, and then it took you a while to wind back. Think how bad it would have been if you'd sat on it for a week and thought, oh, golly. Sometimes there's sometimes time frames where it can be wound back quickly. We should never be embarrassed. It can happen to anyone. These things are so clever that sometimes I will see something and I will literally send it to my tech guys to unravel and tell me, is this one okay?
Well, I think there's quite a common myth that scams affect vulnerable people. And certainly there are some terrible stories of people that are lonely and therefore are profiled and pulled into certain scams. But in the pensions area, certainly the experience that I've had is that actually level of knowledge and financial expertise is not a barrier. In fact, in a way, because the individual is always looking to improve on the investment performance or some other angle of their pension scheme, then they are prime people to be targeted to go into something that's offering a better investment possibility. And so, yes, I don't think you can say people that that have financial experience won't be a victim. Well, I think Lisa makes a really interesting point, because fraud is, it's been one of the oldest crimes ever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people make calls to say, shouldn't the government put in more legislation? Shouldn't there be more to protect people? I would say that it's really difficult because this crime has been going on forever. They reinvent themselves so quickly that even if you find a fraudulent website and bring it down, it's almost more dangerous because another one is going to pop up with exactly the same people behind it.
And this is international. I mean, they're not necessarily in this country, obviously.
They're very unlikely to be in this country because there are consequences for doing this in this country. They hide behind borders where there are no consequences.
I mean, just to pick up on the point about who these people are, I mean, I think the idea of people in a far-flung country sort of, scamming you from afar, taking your money over the internet, yes, those are there. But there are also curious teenagers in Oxfordshire. Because of the technology that we have these days, you can route your traffic through the internet through many different countries and servers and VPNs and firewalls. And by the time it's sort of at the website and the consumers entering the details on a fraudulent website, there's no real way to track that back to the owner of the website. It's completely anonymous. We've seen big international hacking groups coming out of west coast of America, Middle England. It's not just nation states and far-flung groups we need to be worried about.
Yes, I think there are. It is a large pot of money, and it's also an asset that you didn't, in most instances, didn't set up yourself. It was set up for you by your employer. So your level of understanding of what you've got and how it works is incredibly low in a lot of instances. And that makes it a very, very attractive target. Big pot of money, low levels of understanding. And the sort of scams that certainly I've seen in my career have mainly been associated with investments. And I think, again, people don't really understand that their pension is invested. And if they do know it's invested, they don't really know how you pick, a good fund to be in and where to go. So when somebody makes an offer such as, buying shares in a hotel or buying a car park for an individual on the street, that seems like a very legitimate investment because it's bricks and mortar. Some of the red flags in the pension scams are where they are promising, and quite often they use the word guaranteeing investment returns of in excess of 8%, 9%, 10%. And of course, even now when we've got sort of slightly higher inflation, those levels of return haven't been seen in the investment market for a long period of time.
Completely unrealistic, but tempting.
Scams are one of three things. They're either too good to be true, too quick, or too weird. Like Michelle mentioned, the high returns, returns that are too good to be true.
Unrealistic amounts
they
of
solve
profit.
all your money problems, and maybe the money comes out and you can just spend it on whatever you want, and the fees are really low, and it's all hidden in the detail. But something about it just seems wrong. It's a lot of those sorts of scams. And then with the speed, you've got either the pressure to act now, or this deal will be off the table, or like you said, the world will come crashing down, or they don't do enough due diligence. So they're being really, really fast about things. They're not bothered about whether you submit, scans of your passports. They just want your account details and want you to send them the money. And then too weird is those esoteric investments that we were talking about, or maybe there's something about it like you have to pay the funds over through a strange payment channel, like or move it into crypto, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just the sort of thing would raise a flag for me and for most people, you'd think, but obviously not.
If you are still in the process of the transaction, is just to stop what you're doing, and also notify, for example, if you're transferring from one pension fund to another pension fund, notify the original pension scheme to say, I wish I hadn't done this, can you stop it?
Okay.
So you definitely do that. The second thing is to phone Action Fraud. And they will ask for all the details. They've got specific details relative to pensions, which they'll ask you for.
And they're the national reporting organisation.
They are, for all
Yeah.
frauds. So they've got, for any fraud, you would go through them. I'm afraid to say that definitely in the case of pension scams, the probability, they'll give you a crime number, but the probability of you getting your money back is incredibly slow. So I am pleading for people to do it more as a community service rather than for them to hold on to the hope that just because they've got a crime number, they're likely to get their money back, because that's not the case.
Moving out further towards the rest of the financial services industry. It depends on the nature of what has happened, but with other transactions, you can get the money back sometimes as long as you do contact the organisation quickly enough. That is absolutely of the essence. And there will always be a fraud specific number on the website. So go for that. Don't go through your normal customer service and press 1, then 2. Go straight to the fraud line.
And do it right away.
Do it right away. Do not wait at all. And yeah, shut everything down. Just stop it in its tracks as soon as you can.
We're acutely aware that people's pensions are their sort of second biggest asset, usually behind their house.
Yeah.
So they're really serious products. And so, the security of their account and the security of their funds, that's really central to our information security program, and making sure that we don't, we're not accidentally kind of culpable in opening some gate for the scammers to get in. So even since the beginning of the company, we've had a really strong information security program. So we're always looking at what we can do to improve our controls. We're externally audited by independent experts who look at our controls, test our systems, and help us find areas where we can improve, where it's not 100% yet. We discuss it at the board level. It's a really, really top level area, and we like to have a lot of clarity over how we manage those processes so that people can move money in, move money out, withdraw from their pension in a secure way, and we know that the people that we're paying to are who they say they are.